Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about yet another pundit at CNN breaking down. Previously it was losers like Brian Stelter making a fool of themselves year after year, on Twitter and on television as well.
When historians look back on the Trump presidency, they'll say that this was the week that something changed. Something really shifted in the conversations about the president.
Don Lemon also recently went full anti-white racist live on the air, totally embarrassing himself and his station. But instead of giving Lemonade the proper sunset he deserves, CNN kept Don on board. Hell, this kind of wild, out-of-control liberal racism is why they hired Don in the first place. But we're not here to talk about Brian Stelter or Don Lemon today. I've got plenty of old videos about them if you want to catch up on that, but today we're going after another wild one from the fake news network, the worst there is. This week it's CNN's Jim Acosta, who has been having a pretty hard time. He's the White House reporter over there who recently lost his credentials after acting like a totally unprofessional asshole once again. He also refused to give away his microphone, virtually holding the press conference hostage. But the real final straw was when a young female White House intern went to grab the mic from Jim, as she was instructed, and Acosta proceeded to pull away from her, struggling, eventually pushing her away in a fashion that almost looked like a karate chop. And this chop heard around the world has been getting even more coverage too, as some have suspected the White House's footage of it was doctored or re-edited or tampered with in order to make Jim look worse. That's right. Right now, in the present, the mainstream media is more divided than the Civil War on this. Some think it was doctored and others say it wasn't. Some say the video was transcoded or lost its quality, and that might be why it looks like this. There are all kinds of theories running around out there, and I have to say, while it's fun to watch this shit show, it's really all for naught. I personally don't think the video was re-edited, but also, in my opinion, that doesn't even matter. The re-edited version would only have a few frames different from the original, if this theory's true, and it's not enough to make a difference either way. Not for Jim, who I think should have been kicked out of the White House press corps long ago. He always acts like a loud, mean, entitled bully. In fact, I think Jim acted even worse here, and that's why I want to go over the whole extended video today. Jim Acosta's behavior leading up to the chop was bad enough to warrant a suspension. Plus, you add in the fact that he resisted and pulled away and pushed back against a young intern, and boom, that's enough for me. The chop is secondary here, and also, it's just really funny to watch. It's its own meme at this point, and that's why I think liberals are trying to call it fake, because it's such an effective meme, and the joke makes them look terrible. But don't take my word for it. Let's have a look at the extended video ourselves. Here's a clip from C-SPAN called Exchange Between President Trump and CNN's Jim Acosta. Check this out.
One of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms. That
here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
You mean a group of foreigners trying to come into America illegally to take our resources? Yeah, that sounds like an invasion to me too. And I love how President Trump said that, here we go in there, right away. He saw this bullshit coming. This is just classic Jim Acosta, really.
Thank you for telling me that.
And why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election to try to keep...
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process.
Sounds perfectly reasonable to me. Immigrants need to come in legally through a process which screens them, checks them out, and makes sure they aren't dangerous or infected with diseases or something. This is day one border control stuff. Every country on the planet has some version of this. Letting people in without a process is completely ridiculous. I really don't get how CNN or other progressives can back up this kind of a statement. What's the justification here? What's the hurry or urgency? Because I really don't see it. All I see is Democrats funding and supporting foreign caravans from Honduras, because they want to use Central Americans as pawns in their horrible left-wing politics.
And I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
Good point again, Mr. President. The economy is booming for a reason after all, and it's because of Trump, his administration, and their conservative politics. And one of those policies is being strict and firm on immigration. We're not going to let up and make things worse like how Obama did, which resulted in years of dangerous, unfettered, illegal immigration, and worsened our economy because of it. Screw that noise. Let's enforce the laws we have and keep this country safe and prosperous. The other thing worth noting here is Acosta is already interrupting the president. Less than a minute into this and he's trying to cut off the leader of the free world. Have some respect, you idiot. Not saying we should treat Trump like a king or queen or anything, but damn, at least afford him the common respect you give to politicians, or to normal people even. I really don't get why these losers at CNN think they are above this president. He's done more for this country in 2 years than CNN has done in all the decades they've been a fake news company. And their company's failure comes down from the top, and it trickles all the way down to the bottom, to bottom feeder lowlives like Jim Acosta, who also put his company's disrespect for America and its leader on full display here at these White House press conferences day after day. At this point, Acosta has already done enough to get kicked out of the room. Let's see what else he does though. What is it that gets him kicked out of this whole White House?
Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though.
I don't see what them being hundreds of miles away means. Jim says this line repeatedly too, like it's some sort of gotcha, but it's really not. Jim's just stuck in his own liberal bubble, and the president's response to criticisms about this political video are just perfect. They aren't actors. The video used actual footage of real South Americans climbing over real borders. Pretty hard to fight or argue against that, and that's why CNN is reverting to desperately saying it's hundreds of miles away. Sure it is, but this caravan plans to do the same thing at our border eventually. They are openly planning to do this. They've said it. They want to invade here, so I think sharing a video about them invading somewhere else is totally fair and relevant. It proves they've done it before and they'll do it again. And this is also a highly effective strategy for Trump and conservatives. Apparently, that's why CNN is so desperate to bat this thing down.
That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was
enough.
going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President.
That's enough.
And there it was. That was the chop heard round the world. Let me play it again one more time, close up, so you can see it better.
Ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
The other folks. That's enough. Pardon me, ma'am. The other folks. That's enough. Pardon me, ma'am.
And there you have it. You could almost miss it if you weren't paying attention closely, and honestly, it's really not as bad as it's been blown up to be, but it still is pretty bad. Acosta is being a big baby here, pulling away from that girl, swatting her away from him like she's an animal, and after the president said he was already done too. This is just unacceptable. And if it were an isolated incident, I would say a temporary suspension is in order, but let's not forget, Jim Acosta has been doing dumb shit like this for years. And, well, it looks like he finally pushed it too far. But that's not all yet either. This shit show continues and gets even worse. Well, worse for Jim. Trump somehow comes off looking better than ever. The president handles this like a true professional. He comes off like a seasoned stand-up comic, fending off a drunken heckler with grace.
President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Jesus Christ, Jim. Pass the goddamn mic already. You already got one extra question in. Now you're just being disrespectful to the other dozens of reporters there, your colleagues. These people, these other reporters deserve some question time too, Jim. Does this Acosta guy really think his network is above all the other news agencies? Please. If anything, CNN is below all of them, and they don't deserve this much time.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
Zing! Well put, Mr. T.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead.
Seriously, how the hell does CNN and Jim expect to take the high ground on things when they can't even treat people like decent human beings? They pretend to be these kind, virtuous, wannabe peace-loving hippies, but in reality, Jim is just a crybaby, and so is CNN and the left. They have no moral high ground whatsoever. Even though they pretend to care, they really don't.
Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not
like
a big
the rest
fan
of
of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly said...
You aren't the best.
Mr. President,
The president's in a bad mood now. Wow. But he kinda should be. Jim Acosta was acting like a little prick live on TV in front of everyone, treating the president like shit. No one should get treated this way by reporters, let alone a world leader. Can you imagine if Trump or one of his supporters treated a world leader like this? If Sarah Sanders was caught cutting off and insulting Merkel from Germany, we would never hear the end of it, especially from the likes of CNN. But for some reason, dopes like Jim Acosta think it's okay to treat our president this way because he disagrees with him, which is absolutely absurd.
repeatedly, over the course of
Okay, just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
Seriously? I didn't think this could get any worse, but it did. Now Jim is standing up again and yelling at the president, his president. This is how Acosta, a reporter, is treating his own country's leader. Absolutely insane. And it makes Jim look like an unhinged crybaby too. And CNN is looking even worse as well, if that's even possible. In the end, Jim Acosta was suspended until further notice. And I think he should be. Never letting him back into the White House press corps again would be a proper punishment. After all, Jim has had years and years of acting like this, like a giant man baby in front of everyone. And this is not how adults are supposed to act in public, let alone a supposedly professional reporter who is covering the president in his White House. Acosta should be ashamed and slinking away with his tail between his legs now, but all that's happened since is Jim has been on CNN doubling down. They're trying to turn this story against the president, but I don't see how anyone but low IQ CNN viewers would buy that. Anyone who's seen this video we watched today can clearly see Jim had this coming, and it's no wonder the guy is breaking down because of it. Sure, he went on a few CNN shows afterwards and he called the president racist and whatnot. Classic. Acosta even had the balls to say he was acting professional, even though he clearly wasn't. We have the tapes, Jim. With that said, I wouldn't hold my breath to get any sort of acknowledgement or apology from Mr. Acosta. Jim is probably on his way out too. CNN will try and keep him around like they do with other losers like Don Lemon. They don't want to fire anyone and cave in, but once Jim is totally done covering the White House completely, I don't see what else he could bring to the table anymore. We had some good laughs. Love seeing you act like a Looney Tune all these years, Jim, but now it's time for you to go. What do you guys think? Is Jim Acosta breaking down? Should he have been suspended? And was Trump handling that heckling like a champ? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and don't forget to check out our new links in the description below with Twitter, Patreon, and some other cool playlists with other videos. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.